Hey folks, Zach Osterman here, IU Insider, Indianapolis Star, your Friday rundown for December 8th. Happy birthday, Mom. I doubt she'll watch this, but happy birthday anyway. Indiana headed to Atlanta this weekend. Yeah, Auburn at the State Farm Center, 2 p.m. Saturday. Have said this whenever anyone is asked this week, radio interviews, conversations, whatever. These next two Saturdays fascinate me for this team. They looked pretty bad, I think it's fair to say, through a lot of November. It felt a little bit like you felt like maybe they were turning a corner. Louisville, certainly Harvard, and you felt like Maryland and Michigan were a stress test in a way, essentially, of just how much better this group had gotten. And they really kind of took care of business in those two games. Obviously, both those teams are in various states of distress at the moment, but Indiana wiped the floor with Maryland at home. It went on the road. It was tough all night. It made all the winning plays, to use a coaching cliche, in the last 2-3 minutes, in particular of the second half, and it was a deserved winner. It was a deserved victory for Indiana. Now, though, you step up to Auburn on a neutral floor, Kansas at home, the kinds of games, not necessarily that you have to win both of these, but these are the kinds of games, the kinds of settings, the kinds of teams that Indiana's going to have to beat if it's going to get where it wants to go this season, if you understand what I'm saying. I don't think anybody should be worried about tournament resumes or anything like that in December. It's particularly early December. As anyone who kind of follows me on Twitter knows that I have a pretty firm rule of not talking about tournament bracketology and all those things until Valentine's Day. But this is kind of a different stress test of how competitive with the kinds of teams that Indiana is going to need to beat to build an NCAA tournament resume are the Hoosiers prepared to be right now. They have clearly made progress from the first 3-4 games of the season. I thought it was, I didn't go to Ann Arbor. We had other people there. I thought it was interesting, though, to hear Mike Woodson kind of say after the game, he was talking to the studio crew on Peacock, and he said that UConn taught us toughness. They showed us kind of essentially just how consistently tough you have to be to win at the level that they do and that Indiana obviously aspires to. How does that translate over when you're facing an Auburn team with a ton of seniors, a ton of proven production guys who played a lot of basketball together, had a lot of success together? They've played in this event, they've played in this arena. None of that's going to be new to them. How does that carry over when you face Kansas at home? You're going to have a crazy home court advantage, but it's also Kansas. It's Hunter Dickinson. It's DeJuan Harris. It's KJ Adams. Everything that we know Kansas is. Kevin McCullough. Can Indiana win one of these games? Can Indiana at least be competitive in both of these games and look like the sort of team that if you put them in, let's say, 15 of these games in a season, it can win enough of them to build that resume to get into the tournament? Maybe you're not a top 4 seed, but you're at least in. If Indiana can win one of these games and then kind of take care of business in the 3-round winter break, then Indiana's allowed to come out of November, December and say they kind of did everything they needed to. Yes, they lost to UConn. Yes, they only split these two games, but they picked up a signature win in the non-conference. They started 2-0 in Big Ten play. And again, this would also sort of be reliant basically on Indiana finishing 4-1 here over the last 5 games of 2023. They've got Auburn, they've got Kansas, and then they've got those 3 guarantee games at home either side of Christmas. Can Indiana, if they can win one of these and then finish out strong after Kansas, then they'll come into the new year 11-2, 2-0 in the Big Ten. Like I said, they will have picked up a marquee win in the non-conference. They'll have already won a Big Ten road game. I don't think Michigan is ever going to be a quad 1 win. We'll see. But at very least, they've had the experience of going on the road in the Big Ten, playing a familiar opponent that's got some talent, and beating them. And I think that's something a coach is always going to want, kind of early in a season. But I think that, again, I come back to kind of the idea these two games are such a stress test of just how far Indiana's come from those first 3 games of the season that were a lot closer than they should have been, and then the 4th game of the season, which was a pretty ugly loss at the Garden. We'll see. It's going to be fascinating. Check out my Talking Points column if you're going this weekend. I tried to collate a whole bunch of food, drink, dessert, tourist location recommendation sort of dossier for you, for lack of a better term, Polled a couple of friends that still live in Atlanta, because admittedly I don't get out and about in Atlanta nearly as much as I used to, though I'm sure I will be this weekend. So check that out if you are going down. You're looking for places to eat, things to do, etc. Quick hit on IU football too before we get out of here. Curt Cignetti's staff is complete. 5 coaches on offense, 5 coaches on defense. 6 came with him from James Madison. 4 of them on offense. It's clear that in particular he just seemed like he kind of wanted to run it back on offense. His coordinator, who also coaches wide receivers, his quarterbacks coach, his running backs coach, and his tight ends coach, who also coaches special teams. He retained Bob Bostad, Indiana's offensive line coach. So his entire offensive staff will either be, have either been brought over from James Madison or retained from the previous staff. More turnover on defense. He brought his defensive coordinator. He brought his defensive line coach. That's Pat Kuntz, who played at Roncalli and Notre Dame and was a GA at Indiana. His defensive coordinator also was a GA at Indiana under Kevin Wilson. Kuntz was a GA under Tom Allen. But then hired externally for the other 3 positions. Buda Williams coming from Colorado State to help Kuntz coach defensive line. And then the secondary will be Ola Adams, who was for a number of years defensive coordinator at Villanova before spending a year coaching secondary in the NFL. And last year was in an analyst position at Penn State. He'll coach safeties. And I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Rod Ojong is coming from Charlotte to coach corners. He's been a full-time assistant at Charlotte, at Buffalo, a couple FCS stops. He was also an analyst at Georgia and a GA at, I think, North Carolina. So, a varied sort of group, some young coaches in some spots, some more veteran coaches in some spots. Obviously, a lot of coaches, particularly on offense, that know Cignetti well. And everybody's focus for the moment is going to be the portal and recruiting. It will be, that's my outlook, forgive me. It will be interesting to see what the visitor lists look like for Indiana the next couple of weekends. I don't think necessarily every target is going to come in this weekend. For example, if Indiana is trying to bring Jordan McLeod in, the quarterback who was Sun Belt Player of the Year last year under Curt Cignetti and Mike Shanahan and Tino Sunseri, the offensive coordinator and the quarterback's coach, respectively. If I'm not mistaken, McLeod has agreed to play in James Madison's bowl game, although he's in the portal. So you would imagine his recruitment probably won't really take firm shape, and maybe at least publicly, until after the Armed Forces Bowl on December 23rd. But Indiana is going to, they've reaffirmed some commitments from some freshmen. They are going to want to really flood the zone with transfer visits over the next couple of weekends. And a few names have started to trickle out. It'll be interesting to see how many more do. I think Indiana's going to really prioritize quarterback, running back. They're going to need some receiver depth, whether they can or can't get Donovan McCulley back. And then there's going to be some needs on defense, although the other part of this is that a lot of the conversations that we'd be having around getting guys that were on last year's team that Cignetti may want to pull out of the portal, a lot of that stuff would be happening privately, and that would, the reality is that would also be kind of about the kids and where they are in terms of, do they feel like they've gotten a firm idea of their value going in the portal and what NIL opportunities might be out there for them, and of course Indiana is going to present things to them as well. So, as and when portal players, or guys from Indiana that are in the portal start coming back out, I think that'll probably be something that'll just kind of happen. It won't, I think in most, if not all cases, there won't be a lot of build up to it, if you understand what I'm saying. So, but I think it is going to be fascinating to kind of look at these visitor lists. I think in particular next weekend, that's Kansas at home. It's a big basketball game. It's a crazy environment. That's where probably you're going to want to bring some of your top targets in and just kind of give them a sense for, hey, this is the appeal of a place like Indiana and so forth. But what I think is important for Cignetti right now is he's got an entire staff together. So there's no position, there's no player that would be coming in not knowing who their coach would be, maybe not having a position coach to really kind of show them around, take them through the facilities, break down their role and their potential role in the scheme, etc. And it really does, again, just to reiterate this one more time, forgive me, because I know a lot of people are starting to get stressed about this. It really does feel like this weekend and next weekend in particular are going to be pretty important for Cignetti and his staff in terms of rebuilding their roster. So we'll leave it there for this weekend. One more time, or this Friday, happy birthday, Mom. We will see all y'all in Atlanta, and safe travels if you're going. Thanks for watching. I'm Zach Osterman.